Today's interview is with Nico Salgado. Nico's a really cool guy. He's a surfer, a teacher, and a multifamily real estate investor who's also built a house in Nicaragua. So, a really cool interview today. So stick around for all of that. Nico's a really fun guy to listen to. Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Real Estate, where we look to chokeslam all your real estate problems. I'm your host, former WWE wrestler and now Cirque du Soleil performer, and of course, multifamily real estate investor, Barri Griffiths. Now today we're joined by Nico Salgado. Hey, Nico.
Hey, Barry, what's up, my man?
Not a lot, man. Excited to get to talk to you. We connected a few weeks back through a mutual friend, Cedric. So excited to get to talk to you, man. Get to know you a little bit better and know what's going on with you. But before we do kind of jump into today's conversation, do you kind of want to introduce yourself and give people more an idea of who you are and what you've been up to?
Yeah, man. All right, so let's take a look at my W-2. So I'm still a W-2 wage earner on top of the fact that I'm trying to become a full-time multifamily real estate investor. And I'm on my way, man. But I am currently W-2 wage earner as well. So I'll start there. For the past 17 years, I've been teaching Spanish. Okay, so I'm a Spanish teacher in a New York. I started in a New York City school. Now I'm currently working on Long Island in New York as a Spanish teacher. I took 1 year off from that to travel and teach in Spain off the coast of the Canary Islands, off the coast of Africa. You know, because part of my passion as well is traveling and surfing the world, which I do still. But I began teaching for a couple of reasons. One of them was to give back. I come from a family of, there's 8 siblings, and 5 of those siblings I didn't live with, and I saw them struggle with Section 8 housing and poverty. So I wanted to teach and upbring kids of that nature. That's why I began teaching in New York City. And number 2, teaching, provides you summers off so you could travel. Although I didn't realize at the time that wasn't going to be the case, and I wasn't going to be able to not work all summer, because now I do. I work all the time. So, and then in 2012, on one of my journeys down to Nicaragua, I've been there a bunch of times, Central America a bunch of times to surf. I stumbled across this beautiful paradise of a land. It's in northern Nicaragua, untouched. You could still see cowboys walk, or el gauchos, whatever you want to call them, walking around there. There's cows, there's horses. It's like a farmland, and it's right on a beautiful beach for surfing. And I said, you know what? I've always been interested in real estate. Why don't I start somewhere where I love, somewhere where I can, purchase something and see myself visiting, right? So I ended up buying a piece of land down in Nicaragua. For $20,000. It was the first lot in a development that was to be built. And typically, the people that you get down there are just expats, people retiring, looking for a cheaper place to live in some sort of a paradise setting. And that was it, So bought a piece of land. It took 2.5 years to get the title switched into my name, and then another couple of years just to build. But we actually just finished building it in 2020. In the spring of 2020, I built a little house, a 2 bedroom house, and with the idea of traveling there and using it as an Airbnb for the other times. Now, as we wrapped it up in spring of 2020, obviously, COVID hit, so that didn't really pan out. So currently it's still sitting there and just hanging out. So if you, Barry, ever want to go down, I would be happy to let you hang out in my house down in Nicaragua.
Sounds like a great place. Sounds like a really interesting project. Out of interest, I'll get to the real estate in a second. Where's the best place you've been to surf?
So this is the thing, man. I mean, with surfing, it's going to come down to the sessions that I have. I mean, obviously there are beautiful places like Indonesia, Australia, beautiful, beautiful places. But the best waves and the best sessions that I had were actually in El Salvador, and I only went once. I spent, I think, a week there, and it was every single day of the most perfect right point break that I've ever surfed. And I got like 20 barrels in one day. If you know what it is, that's like the pinnacle of surfing. You want to get barreled, you want to get inside the tube, right? I got 20 perfect ones in one day with one of my best friends who actually passed away surfing, but we got to spend that time together, and that was one of the most magical trips of my life.
Very cool, very cool. So surfing essentially led you to real estate. It seems like your passion for real estate and trying to create something where you can continue that passion but have something else that supports it kind of maybe led you to real estate.
Yeah, exactly. And so what I really noticed was, so as COVID was hitting, I had well, actually before, prior to COVID hitting, I had the option to sell, right? So people were asking to buy that property down there. And you know what it was? It's like, I bought it, and for 20 grand, I put maybe 45,000 in to build this little house, and people were then trying to buy it for twice what I paid for it. So, right there was like, wow, this is something that is viable. This is something that, aside from the fact that people were also trying to rent it, I had people lined up to rent it. So you can make income from it. You can earn, and this was all paid off. There's no loan on this. So you can earn passive income through this, which is excellent, something that I always would like to have, right? And it was also worth more. So there's equity in it, so just a couple of things that really led me to really do a deep dive into more of what real estate can offer.
Yeah. But that's such an interesting project, man. How how did you go about? Was it a difficult? It seems like it was a difficult process to get title, because if it took 2 years, how was that process? Why was it so difficult, and how was that initial process of buying that land initially?
Yeah, it wasn't really that difficult. It's just the bureaucracy of down there of how things work. It just takes a while. Nothing is as official as it is here in the United States. It's a very third world country. So finding the actual documents to make sure that you have a clean and clear title was just challenging. And I didn't really do it. I just had a local lawyer down there handle it for me. Luckily, I speak the language. So nobody would really take advantage of me. And I have a lot of pretty good friends down there. You're just from networking and visiting a lot. So, the lawyer was a friend of a friend, and there's a community down there of people who are doing exactly what I'm doing now. And it's just, people kind of look out for each other. So wasn't necessarily dangerous, and the challenging really wasn't challenging either, just time consuming.
Mm. And now you have a great house, right, in Nicaragua. That's a pretty cool thing. The So where did the transition to multifamily come in?
Yeah, so as this was going on, I was also rebuilding my house. Here in New York, we actually lost my house to Sandy, my then wife at the time. We bought a brand new house. We bought a house in June of 2012. We moved in, and then Sandy hit it. If anybody still remembers Hurricane Sandy, and it kind of destroyed our house. It shifted. This is in October of 2012. It shifted the house off the foundation. We ended up having to knock it down and rebuild a brand new house. So throughout this time of building the house down in Nicaragua, we were also building a house here in New York, and I had some free time because I was currently not working on the house. I had people doing it for me, and I'm a handy guy. I typically like to work hands on, but I wasn't able to. I had, because there was a lawsuit involved and everything. It was just a mess, man. But somebody was building the house for me. I had free time and some money because we had a lawsuit settlement. So I was looking at properties here in New York, and I looked at a ton of duplexes, right? I looked at a couple condos and single families, and nothing was penciling out, to to provide any source of sustainable income, right? I could have bought a duplex, I could have bought a single family or a condo, and I would have been making maybe a few $100s in revenue each month. But for me to get the next property, it was going to take 10 years for me to save up to buy a $600,000 house here in New York. You know what I mean? It wasn't sustainable. It wasn't something that I saw as a means of scaling, right? It just wasn't possible. So I began searching, bigger multifamily properties through the Bigger Pockets, forum. I'm sure everybody knows about Bigger Pockets if you're into real estate investing, and they're not necessarily geared towards large multifamilies, but that's where I began my conversation. And through the Bigger Pockets platform, I encountered the Jake and Gino community, who took me on as a mentee, and they became my coaches in November of 2019. And from there, man, it was just a whole new world.
But what was it about multifamily that attracted you? Because obviously, like, okay, you've started down the journey of real estate. You built this property. You're having issues with your own personal residence, which I'm sorry that happened to you, by the way. That kind of sucks. But
That's okay, man.
long time ago now, right? It's probably water under the bridge kind of now. But from there you could have gone anyway, right? There's many different avenues that you can go down in real estate. What was it about multifamily that attracted you?
Well, a lot of things. So, it goes back to my principles of wanting to help people, and I saw my mom struggle in different housing units, and she was a Section 8, for the majority of her life when my parents split up. and my siblings were also lived in Section 8 housing, and there were so I noticed a lot of good landlords, a lot of bad landlords. I noticed the system was pretty interesting too, the whole Section 8 system, and how it helped people. And part of me wanted to, figure out how to give back and create these good, healthy environments, because there were cases where the landlord or landlords, whoever owned these properties that my mom was living in, weren't fixing up the properties necessarily. They were kind of letting a lot of deferred maintenance happen. They were just kind of treating these people, who was my family, as just nobodies. And I did not like that. So I see a means of giving back to an apartment community as managing it properly, right? And creating safe and healthy living environments for people, where people can flourish, where regardless of income, like if you're making barely any money and you're living off Section 8, that's okay. You should still have a nice place to live, right? So part of my thought process is, how else can I help? I've done so much with helping my students. People come back to me all the time, tell me how I was their favorite teacher. I hear so many stories about what things that happened 10, 15 years ago in class from my students. And even recently, I've been hearing great stories. And I also coach, I coach soccer, I coach track, I coach surfing, and I give back that way, right? But now on a larger scale, where I can create a community where people can have a safe living environment, that's powerful for me. That means a lot for me. So that's basically where I started thinking about multifamily, on top of the fact what everybody else talks about is like the scale, these economies of scale. The fact that you can actually buy these large buildings. It's not just for billionaires to purchase. So it is, but it began with the need and the want to try to help the broader community.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that's so huge, and I think I hear it time and time again. To more multifamily investors I speak to, that's one of the driving forces behind why they invest in multifamily, and one of the most important factors when they're looking at deals is, how can I better this community? How can I give people a great place to live, right? Because ultimately, I think a lot of multifamily investors are good people, right? There's bad people in everything, but there's a lot of them that have a good heart and want that thing, and also financially it benefits you and your investors if you're giving people a great place to live, right? If you're running the place badly, is the profits don't usually come, right? Good things come to people who provide good things, I feel like. So it's definitely a win-win situation in that. What made you decide also that you wanted to go the mentoring route? Because obviously these days there's tons of information out there, right? I think you said you joined in 2019. There's information everywhere, YouTube, podcasts, Bigger Pockets, all this place that you can access to tons of people in some ways. What made you decide that coaching was a good route for you?
Yeah, great question. So in summer of 2019, when I did realize, look, I wanted to do something on a bigger scale because I heard that it was possible, right? And I realized I could help people out. I found a this is ridiculous now that I'm thinking about it and restating it. I found a well, there was like 20 units, right? They were all studios, and it was Section 8 housing here where I live in Long Beach, New York, which is extremely expensive, right? And I saw, and it was dilapidated. I mean, it basically needs to be, it needs to be demolished and rebuilt. So I went through like a 3 or 4 month process of my own due diligence, doing everything on my own, trying to figure out how to demolish this building and rebuild it bigger and better, right? And I had conversations with local builders, and I had people map out. I was talking to architects, and I got prices from different architects. I got prices from builders. I went to the town and I spoke with the commissioner of building, and discussed on what would be possible there and why. And I spent a lot of time and energy on it, and then realized there was no possible way for me to number one, get it done, especially on my own, and number two, to actually turn a profit. Because here where I live, it's so expensive and taxes are so expensive that there was no profit to be made. And after going through this 3 or 4 month process, I realized that. But I only really realized it after talking to a few different possible mentors, because I was looking for help. My original mindset was I can do everything on my own. And that just completely changed once I finally, joined the Jake and Gino community.
Yeah, I'm a big. I was just asking because I wanted your take on it, but I have a coach myself, and I'm a big fan of that because for a number of reasons, right? First and foremost, you don't need to make the mistakes that they make, right? It doesn't mean that you won't. It usually means that you can't, right? You don't have to, right? And also,
Hmm.
you can gain their knowledge, right? Soak in their knowledge, right? If they've been doing this for 10 years or whatever it is, 5 years, you can gain that 5 years of knowledge just by going through them, right? You don't have to go alone, right? And you just having someone else watch over you, give you advice, give you education is huge, man. I think it's, like they always say, right? Michael Jordan, Tiger Woods, they all have coaches, right? So why wouldn't we, right?
Exactly. You
Yeah.
know what it is? I mean, and it'll really shorten the learning curve if you really believe in, scaling, if you really believe in yourself as becoming a better person and a better businessman and a better operator. I mean, you need help, and there's no shame in that. I think that that's actually how you're going to get farther in life.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was I know you've done one deal for sure, but where did you go from there? From joining, have you done a few deals? Was it just that one deal that we've talked about?
Yeah, just one large
Yeah.
multifamily syndication, right? And it's interesting, man. So, like I mean, when you get into this multifamily space, there is so much that needs to happen. There's so much that needs to be done. And again, I immediately started doing everything on my own before it took me a few months to really start delegating and separating jobs and roles and figuring out what I should focus most on. But in one aspect, it's good to learn and understand every aspect of the business. But then on the other hand, eventually, if you really want to make deals happen and scale a real, genuine, and true business, you're going to have to split up roles and responsibilities, right?
Yeah,
So,
I had the same thing, man. When I decided I was going to do it myself, and then I realized, wait, this is not
mhm.
a good idea.
Yeah, and you know what it is? When it came down to that, it was about a 1 year from joining the Jake and Gino community. The same month, it was basically exactly a year when we closed on that first deal. And I was out of the group, there were eight of us that were on the general partnership side. It's 194 units in Columbus, Ohio, and we syndicated it, right? So I was the least experienced, and that gave me confidence, to say, okay, I believe in this team, I believe in their track record and what they have done and what they can accomplish. That gave me the confidence to then reach out to my investors, the investor base that I had been building for and educating for the prior year. You know what I mean? And had I done it on my own, first of all, I wouldn't have any clue of what to do or how to execute any aspect of it necessarily, or maybe a little bit of it. But then, I wouldn't have also had the confidence to talk to my investors and say, hey, look, this is the deal that I believe in.
Yeah, and that's the great thing, and it's talked about all the time, right? The power of the team and who you work with, but it really does make a huge difference, right? Because as we mentioned, like there's so many parts that go on in syndicating a large apartment complex, right? That most people probably can't even imagine the things that go into it. But also, there's things that you're not good at as well. It's not just a matter of workload, right? There's not all of us are good at underwriting. Not all of us are good at speaking to investors. Not all of us are good at doing due diligence items, right? We all have skill sets, and I think it's so great that you're able to find what you're good at, right, and know the other parts, right? It's important that you don't know if you don't know those other parts, you can't keep an eye on those things, but focus on what you're good at, stay in that lane, and have other people that are good at those other pieces of the puzzle, and then you have the full jigsaw puzzle, right? And you're able to do deals that you probably wouldn't have been able to. I know that's the case for me, right? There's deals that we're looking at that I never would have been able to look at before if I was trying to do it myself.
Absolutely, man. I originally began offering. So my target market is actually Tampa and Central Florida, and I'm constantly adjusting and changing my criteria as I'm learning and growing, and I'm finding the certain competition in certain with certain asset sizes, right? So if I'm finding now a sweet spot between 20 and 40 units, that's where we're targeting currently. Whereas in the past, in the first few months of me submitting offers, I got up to offering at we offered on a 241 unit complex, and I was like, there was no possible way. It was my name on this LOI, no possible way that I would have been able to raise that amount, unless I would have worked to bring on the right team members. And I did. At that point, I finally had some good team members. But I'm always adjusting my criteria to try to fit the environment that I'm in. I found so much competition in the 100 plus units. Not that I feel that I could even raise enough money, but I do know people that can help, and I work with people that would be able to raise enough money for that. But I found so much competition there. I found just people way overbidding these properties, and I'm I'm finding less of that in the 20 to 40 unit range. I'm finding more mom and pop owners, which is what the Jake and Gino platform really preaches. And I'm really trying to fall back on that now. I came to the realization recently that the if we're going to be syndicating a deal, and that's not the only thing I'm looking for. Obviously, we would also do a joint venture if possible too. But if we're going to be syndicating a deal, I think in the $1 million raise, we would be comfortable with the current people that I'm working with and looking at deals with. We can comfortably raise $1 million. This leaves us at a $3 million purchase price, which then equates to a 20 to 40 unit, building because everything's around $100,000 in the Tampa area, right? So that's where we're at right now. Currently about to do a second round of text campaign. The first round got us a couple, like 2% response rate. We're going to be a little bit more aggressive with this text campaign and expand it a little bit more. And then we're going to be jumping into mailing, man, just like everybody else is doing, because everything that people are seeing from brokers is being in Tampa, especially, and all other hot markets is being seen by thousands of people and offered on by hundreds of people. So we're not able to compete with that.
So you guys are looking to go direct to the sellers, or
Yeah, and
are
here,
go? Yeah,
go
sorry, go
ahead.
ahead. No, yeah, you are going direct to the sellers. It seems like.
Yeah, and here's where the teams come in, and so I discovered that there was I just through conversations with people that there was one guy who he built his whole career so far on seller financing. He's got his whole portfolio through seller financing. Never went to a bank, and he's now financially free, and he's great at talking to people. And I'm not. I don't have those skills. I don't even understand. I mean, I understand seller financing, but not to the level that he does, and not to the ability that I would be able to negotiate as he can. So what I did, I invited him to, look at deals with us. So now there's four of us currently looking at deals together in Tampa. And there's one guy, I mean, his job isn't necessarily to underwrite. So we're doing the underwriting. We bring him the deal or the lead, as for example, with the last texting campaign. And we just set him to set him off to do his thing. And he talks to these owners and he's really good at it. And it's just, that's the kind of thing that I really need to focus more on is designating these jobs to the right people.
Yeah, that's interesting to me. They're going direct to sell because a lot of us, I think, rely on brokers, and it's just like you said, right? How many people have eyes, especially if it's on LoopNet, right? How many people have eyes on these properties? Thousands, and even the so-called off-market deals, right? How many people are they? Because there's so many buyers right now, right? Multifamily is such a strong asset class, right? And rightly so, because it's proven to be resilient over the pandemic, and I think it will be resilient for the coming years. It's extremely competitive. So, how many people are looking at the same deal as you? And then if you want to make a run at it, how many other people are going to make an offer? And, it's very, very competitive, and it's tough to get deals, right? Doesn't mean that you can't. There's people getting deals, but why not try something else like you're doing, right? And I'm really interested in why you went with a text campaign to start off with. I think you said you're going with the mailers now, but why did you guys start with a text? And then what did the text say as well? What was the magic words?
Yeah, so the texting campaign was a few reasons. Number one, we were like, well, everybody gets a text right away, so that all being that's given that their phone number is correct and true and functioning, right? They I always look at and see a text. I don't necessarily always respond, but I think that the visualization of it and having it, everybody's got a cell phone these days, that was a powerful means, and it's kind of a little easier for us to dabble in direct to owner that way, right? As opposed to mailers, which is more expensive. The text campaign was pretty cheap. We have a service that does it for us. It's like $20 a month or something. One of my partners handles it, and then we write something up short and nice, and then give them the option to respond to us or not. And if some people say f off, and some people say yes, let's talk. And it's just the way it is. And we had originally considered doing a cold calling service uh, with this group down in Argentina, but we didn't. We in the end we didn't go with that. We decided to start with texting. We felt like that was the easiest way into a direct to owner campaign, right?
Yeah.
That's why we started there. So what did it say? It was like, hey, this is Shane and Nico. We buy multifamily properties in Tampa, Florida. We saw your property or something like that, and we love the way it looks. We would love to learn about what your goals are for 2020 or 2021, whatever it was. If you say, are you looking to sell? It kind of can turn people off. So we
Yeah.
said we would love to talk more about what your goals are.
Yeah. And do you know what your response rate to that was?
Yeah, so it was only about a 2% response rate,
Okay.
and yeah, which is okay. I heard you mailers can get a little bit more response rate, but this, as far as cost, very cost effective, and as far as being able to talk to some people, this is a short list. It was only a list of 100 people. We got two actual responses from it, and we had conversations into and negotiations into a lost deal, but it was still something, right?
Yeah, exactly. No, that's pretty good, I'd say, from 100 leads to be able to have that conversation and even have a run at a property, I think is quite impressive. That's pretty cool. And it's like you said, it's Texas. I'm guessing you pay a company, right, that does this for you, and you input all the information, and they kind of just mass blast that, everyone out with the text messages. Is that how it works?
Yeah, exactly. And they'll tell you, like, you'll get a response back of which numbers are invalid, and they track some things for you. Um, it's a great service, man. So some people use that accompanied by phone calls, accompanied by mailers. So there's some people are doing it all, and we're just not there yet. We might be there at some point.
Yeah, but was it how did you find the owners? Because obviously a lot of these properties are in LLCs, and then you have to find the LLC and then find the address, find the LLC, find the owner from there. Would you have a company do that, or were you guys doing it yourselves?
Yeah, no, I don't do it myself. So I have a guy
Okay.
on Fiverr, just a guy on Fiverr does it. He's from California, actually. He's American. Great guy. He's got he gives a pretty good list. I mean, obviously, people in my network also have access to Reonomy and CoStar and stuff like that too. So I could reach out to them for a, but this guy uses the same services. So he'll build a list for us. He'll scrub it for us. He'll make sure, the numbers are good. He'll give us like 5 numbers and or addresses for people. And he's a great guy to know, and he's quick and just easy to work with.
That's the way to do it. I'm big on outsourcing, right? Yes, you could do everything yourself, but as we mentioned earlier, there's so many moving parts to being a multifamily investor and a real estate investor in general. The more you can outsource, the more you can kind of push forward with the important tasks, right? Outsource the stuff that you can get someone else to do on important, focus on the important tasks. So that's cool that you did that. So yeah,
Yeah.
why Florida? Because you want a vacation there, good surfing.
No, so there's no waves in Tampa. I should have picked Cocoa Beach or somewhere where where there is waves. But so it's funny. I was just like Gino from Jake and Gino was like, "Well, which market are you going to pick?" And I looked at I just Googled, I was like top 10 real estate markets in the United States. This was when I didn't really know much. And Tampa was on the list, right? And there were other markets obviously on that list. I think I got the list from Bigger Pockets, oddly enough. And Gino was like, well, which one would you mind traveling to? I said, well, actually, this was in November of 2019. I said, I'm going to Tampa. And it was on the list in December. And he was like, perfect, that's your market. And it didn't really matter in the end, what's the best market, in the United States or whatever, because there are so many good markets. But what I found, what really matters and what really helped me in my journey was just drilling down and staying focused on that one particular market. Because, in the Jake and Gino community and in that network of people, of hundreds of people and investors, I was known as the Tampa guy. So Gino himself and my coach, Mike Taravella, they were pushing out to people, oh, you're interested in Tampa? Reach out to Nico. And that's what happened. So there were some experienced guys in the community that were looking to expand into Tampa. And they reached out to me because I had already had a bunch of relationships with brokers, with property managers, with people with boots on the ground down there. And they were like, why even bother starting new when we could just talk to Nico? So we started looking at deals together, these guys in the community, great guys. And we liked each other, started submitting offers, and that was it. So they actually, on that 241 unit that we were offering on, and we were actually pretty close to that one in Tampa. We didn't win, right? But they then found that same group of guys. They then found the property in Columbus, and they invited me on. Because I guess they liked me. I don't know what it was, Barry.
It's not surprising that they like you. You're a pretty likable guy, man. But it just shows you that's how it happens a lot of times, right? As well in this business, right? It's just being a good person, connecting with people, being active, right? Knowing kind of what you're talking about, and working hard and pushing forward, and things happen because of that. I like Tampa too. It's not my market, but I used to live in Tampa, believe it or not. So I'm a big fan of that. Great. I'd like to move back around there. It's a beautiful place. And, it's right now demographically, everyone's moving there, right? Who doesn't want to live in Florida right now? It seems there's a lot of, I'm sure around where you're living, a lot of people are moving to Florida right now.
Oh yeah, man, absolutely. I think you told me that you had been in Tampa. That's cool, man. Is that where you got Hulk?
No, Hulk is my 5 pound little Yorkie. Now we got Hulk in Las Vegas. I've been in Vegas nearly 6 years now, so
Ah,
yeah,
okay,
he'll be
okay,
six
cool,
years
cool.
this year. Yeah, yeah. Hulk's a Sin City boy. He likes to party a little bit too much. So, well, cool, man. Interesting story. So what? So next, your focus is on to trying to get anything between the 20 and 40 unit space in Tampa. Is that where your focus is?
Yeah, and we're looking to syndicate. I mean, look, I said before I'd be open to JV, and I kind of am, but it also really depends on how we're going to get in. That's why I focused on getting this guy, the seller finance guru, in my network and as a partner because, oh, and actually he committed to moving down there. So
Oh
he's
wow.
originally from upstate New York. He just bought or reserved an RV pad, so he's got an RV, and he drove down, and he's going to be there for a year. So he's going to be our boots on the ground. He's got construction background, property management background, and the seller finance. I mean, he's just an all around great guy to have. So yeah, so we're focused on that. We would do a JV, but that as a JV, it's going to have to probably be something smaller, because combined we can't come up with $1 million combined, between the three or four of us. So
Yeah.
we're still looking. I mean, whatever comes up, we're going to attempt to most likely syndicate. But if we find something that is seller financeable or something that we can take on together as a smaller group, we would do that as well.
Yeah. Well, out of interest, what is your criteria? What do you got? What type of deals are you looking at?
Yeah, so we're looking at at B and C class, typically C plus class. We're looking to do some value add. We would love it if I mean, ideally, I would do the same thing that we're doing up in Columbus, where we would go in to a property that's we walked into that 75% occupied, and then we actually had to renovate a lot, and we dropped occupancy a lot, and then now we're actually on the uptick, and we're getting occupancy back up, and the value is just really, really skyrocketing over in Columbus. And I would like to do the same thing. I would like to get into a really distressed property. Now, obviously, bank financing is going to be tough to find, but we have connections with some money guys and hard money and private money where we could, or even the seller finance route where we can possibly get in, really fix up a property, fix up the community, and then, cash flow like mad. I mean, that's the goal. And then eventually get out of it. If it's going to be a JV, we would keep it as long as possible. If it's going to be a syndication, we're looking at 5 to 7 years now.
I know Jake and Gino are big on the refi and roll, right? Is that something you guys are looking for as well? Ideally, if you can do it.
Ideally, absolutely, we would refi and roll. I mean, there's still discussion of whether or not we would, see, everybody talks about like getting their investors out of the deal and then keeping the deal for themselves. Investors don't necessarily look highly on that, and I don't necessarily think that's a good strategy either. I'm focused exclusively on getting my investors value. So when I'm underwriting for my investors, and if we can refinance and get them money back and increase the IRR, heck yes. If we can then get them 100% of their money back and keep them in the deal, heck yes, let's do it. That's the ideal situation. But if we were going to go the route of JVing, we would keep it for, obviously, yes, refi and roll, keep it for as long as possible, and continue that. Yeah, if that answers your question.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. This is what's cool about multifamily, right? You have a number of different options, and like you said, you can find the right deal. You can cash flow like crazy, which is what the ultimate goal is, right? Get that cash flow streams in. But this is a cool story, man. I really appreciate you sharing that. But as this show is called Wrestling with Real Estate, I like to incorporate some wrestling related real estate questions. So the first one I told you earlier, which is, what will your wrestling name be?
Oh, all right. So it's funny. I originally thought of something weird like El. So yeah, I'm a Spanish teacher. I was
Yeah.
thinking elbow because I used to tell my students that. I used to be like, hey, I mess with my students all the time. And I'm like, I am elbow as opposed to like El Chapo or something like that. And I'm going to hit you with the elbow. But I thought of something better because my business name is Small Axe. And that would be my wrestling name, Small Axe.
Yeah. Why? Out of interest, why did you call your company Small Axe?
So man, so this comes from the premise of Bob Marley's Small Axe. I'm also a musician and a reggae musician, and he talks about the oppression and all this. There's so much meaning behind the small acts. But if here's what it comes down to: if all you need is this one little small tool or small axe that you can continue to sharpen, and you can take down these big trees. And that's the premise behind it. I want to show people that, me coming from not much at all, my mom with on Section 8, I'm struggling, that I can still build a lasting empire with just the small axe that I have. So that's where that comes from.
Man, I love that. That's really cool. That's really cool. What every wrestler has a special move. What is your special move?
Hmm. So I think I see myself as the glue of like a connector between people. I find the right person for the job, right? And I'm actually reading this book, Who Not How, right? And
Mm,
this speaks a lot to it. So I ask myself, how are we going to get this deal done? But who do I need to get this deal done? That's why I brought in my banging partner, Gwaith. This guy's a financial genius, right? I brought him into some deals that we were looking at down in Florida. Then we partnered on that Columbus deal. I brought in this guy, Larry Fierro, who is the seller finance guru. So I bring people in based on the fact that I feel like they would mesh well with the other teammates that I'm working with, and just whatever skills that they can bring to the table. So I don't see myself as the best at anything, but I am able to understand and interpret people's needs, wants, and skill sets. So I'm the glue.
yeah, man. No, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's a great skill set to have, no doubt. What's been the biggest body slam you've taken?
Oh my God, man. So I've had a lot. Look, man, I lost my best friend in surfing, lost my mom, my dad, my grandpa, all within like whatever. So, but this isn't it. So here's what I'm going through now, man. And this was probably the biggest body slam. So my wife, ex-wife now, or almost ex-wife, she, oh, I'm not going to get too into it, but there was a period of time when just started my multifamily journey, in the beginning. Now this is the beginning of 2020. We separated, not amicably, kind of kidnapped my daughter, and I am struggling, right? And on top of all this, trying to get into this multifamily space and prove to myself, yes, I can do this. So I started a meetup group, right? Now, the first meetup was in-person meetup. It was like March 3rd or 4th, right before COVID hit. And I set it up. My friend let me use his restaurant. I got to rent it. So it's like a bakery, rather. I rented the whole, he just gave it to me, the whole thing. He made baked goods for all the people that were coming. And the first person to walk in the door, I was like, hey, welcome to my meetup, And the guy hits me with a bunch of papers. He says, you're being served with divorce. After everything that has already been going on, man, my heart was dropped. The first person to walk into the room was that. How am I going to continue with this? Right. So, man, was that a freaking body slam. And I finished the night off. I don't even remember what I said or where I was. I finished that night off, and I was just so ready to quit, man. But I didn't quit. I stuck with it, you know.
Yeah, I'm glad you did, man. And there's no doubt you're going to go on to big things, man. No doubt about that. So thank you for sharing that. Sorry you went through that. So was there a moment that you were standing on the top rope, getting ready to jump, but you were too scared? What was it, and how did you overcome it?
I think it's that same story, right? So after that, I had to make a decision. Should I literally couldn't focus on anything real estate. I couldn't focus on work. I couldn't even keep my mind focused for a few weeks after that event. Okay, now I'm getting divorced. Never saw this coming. We'd been together for 17 years, right? So never saw this coming. Obviously, there were some serious issues which we don't need to talk about, but never saw that coming anyway. So I had to decide. I had to say, well, am I going to do this? Am I going to continue with this, or am I going to give up? And everybody in the community that I've been involved with was just cheering me on. I had like coaching conversations, life coaching conversations with Gino and his wife, and they were like, look, we're going to help you out. You can do this. So I actually scheduled another meetup. We switched it to an online platform. I scheduled that. I made it happen. Did another one, made it happen. Then I got a partner to help me, made it happen. Started submitting offers, and little by little, I just built my confidence back up. I built my courage back up, and I was like, I got this, to the point where then by the summertime, I was offering, like I told you, on a 240 unit conference, right? So making it happen, man.
Oh man, I love that, man. That's so cool, so cool. And that's such a representation of what real estate is, I think. It's not about doing 10 million things each and every day, right? The more you can do, the better, right? As long as it's tactical and you're going towards your goal. But it's about doing the little things daily, right? Just doing a few things today, doing a few things tomorrow, then a few things the day afterward. And it also snowballs, right? The more you do, the more you want to do, I feel like. And it's just healthy. There's times I've had this, not as bad a situation as you, but I get frozen by, what do I do next? Should I even be doing this? And you just do one thing, right? You can make a list of 200 things that you need to do right now, right? But just make a list of 2 things and do those 2 things. And then tomorrow do another 2 things. And then maybe the day after you feel like 3 things. And it really, it's like, how do you eat an elephant, right? One piece at a time, right? Which is a stupid, I always hear that analogy. Hopefully nobody's eating elephants, because I like elephants, but it's the idea of, you do that little bit at a time, right? And eventually, you've eaten the whole elephant. Again, stupid analogy, but you just kind of get there eventually, right? And I think that, that's a lesson for everyone, I think, to just do a little bit at a time. And it's amazing where you can get to, and you just take consistent action. So cool.
I love it, man. You're right. The momentum, man, it just keeps you going, and it builds, and it makes you feel more confident, more strength. It gives you more strength, and great things happen, man. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hey, man, thank you for giving us your time today. I really appreciate it. Cool story, cool guy. Really enjoyed talking to you, man. But if the people wanted to do something, people listening today, they inspired about what you've talked about, if they wanted to do something for you, what could they do, and how could they do that?
Well, so I mean, I have my meetup, which I love. It's a virtual meetup now. We do it two times a month, and that's a great way to get in if you're a little shy, right? Or I mean, look, I say give me a call, but that can scare people off. You can go to my website. You're going to find my meetup there. You're going to find my podcast there. You're going to find everything that I'm doing and working on. Any deals that I have would be there. So reach out to me, I guess. But it can be, I guess, fearful for some people to just jump on a phone call with me. But if you want to, I'm a nice guy, though. I don't bite. I don't eat elephants either, Barry. But if I think that the best way is just go to my website, and it's www.smalaxecommunities.com. So small axe, AXE, communities, IES at the end.com.
Cool. I'll include that in the show notes and the description. But like you said, right, it's, for some people, might seem intimidating, but I'm the same. I love talking about this stuff. I love talking to people. I enjoy getting to know people, and you seem very much the same. And so if anyone wants to reach out to you, I think they should absolutely get out there and reach out to you. But if not, go to your meetup, and if not, do that. Listen to your podcast and give him a 5-star rating and write him a great review. So check out all that out. Well, Nico, hey, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate it, man. This was fun, and hopefully we'll meet in person at some point.
Yes, thank you, Barry.